We're recording, man. We're up and live right now, man. We're in it because we're gonna get some of this stuff for the recordings. So, yeah, let's get into it. So, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Humble Hustle Project, a podcast that's centering personal development. I'm joined as always by my brothers Devin Jackson and tonight Magnum PI Brett Pollock. We got some good conversation tonight. Brett, we all have life decisions, and mustaches are for the faint of heart.
Right now, Jake. Don't even. I knew you were gonna call me out. Like, not this early, bro. Not this early. Bro, hey, you just hate on this. I take that as a compliment.
Well, it's a great jumping off point for our conversation tonight. Maybe oh, this is gonna be a stretch, but telling your story,
right.
telling us a little bit about each other, but
the whole story,
the whole story, yeah. Well, tonight, fellas, we're talking about, and for those listening in tonight, we're talking about how to foster your voice, how to really cultivate your story, own your story, and how we look at some of the people we idolize the most, and how their stories almost become evangelized into their identity and their passions, and synonymous with their pretty much their brand, their personal brand. And so before we do that, I want to check in with the fellas. How we doing this week, guys? It's been a minute. We're rocking and rolling. It's good to connect and see y'all's faces, even though they may have changed a little bit.
I'm doing well, man. It's good to see both of you. Honestly, it's weird, man. Getting back into a place where I'm active every single day has been kind of it's been a way for me to look at life through a lens of gratitude. Just seeing the day by day changes, seeing my energy levels change, seeing how I feel in the morning, seeing how I feel at night. Just overall, man, I'm very grateful right now. Looking at a lot of things in life, and just excited, man. Like getting that hunger back. It's like, oh shit, I'm starting to get my stride. Like I'm just getting warmed up. So feels good.
And for those of you real quick that have been watching the pod, every time Devin records an episode, his face is getting slimmer and slimmer every time. The guy's dropping weight like it's nothing. So good on you, man. I gotta get on your vibe. What about you, Brett? How you doing, big dog?
Doing well, man. Just another week. Doing well. It's good to see you guys. It's been a couple weeks since we recorded, but it's always a pleasure to see you guys. Got some things coming up that are pretty exciting. Trying to make some moves, Jake. I know you're kind of in there too. Yes, just looking forward to it. Looking forward to the challenges that lie ahead. And hopefully, next time we talk, we got some exciting news for you guys. So just blessed as always, and just happy to be here talking with you guys, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you both checking in. And for me, myself, I am, right there with you, Brett. So he alluded to a little bit, like some very significant life changes could be taking place for ourselves outside of the pod. The pod is one component of what we do and what we like to do and what we like to put out there in the world. But that's only, what is that? An hour or so in your ear that you get from us weekly. So we got full lives outside of this that we're operating and moving in, and definitely growing each and every which way. Mm-hmm. I think because you've seen the energy from us in the last pause. Like we've been going through some growing pains ourselves. At least I know I have, and so I'm excited as those growing pains are taking place, and new opportunities and paths are presenting themselves. So sorry for being ambiguous. That's not the point of this podcast. The point of this podcast is to cultivate and learn tips and tricks to various personal development journeys and skills. So tonight I'm really excited because this was something that was personal, like literally just happened to me. And so the topic we're going to talk about is about fostering your voice. And so I wanted to talk about this, fellas, because I literally just had a student. And so I was working with a college student where we're sitting in a presentation meeting. We're introducing ourselves. We're telling, the audience a little bit about our background and where we come from, what our life stories are. And after the whole presentation, after we made our reports and whatnot, and the student came up to me afterwards and he's like, "Hey man, like how did you get to be so comfortable like sharing who you are with people you don't even know. Like it was like the most structured question I've ever experienced from a student. It was so wild because like usually a student tries to like play around with a couple sentences, concepts that are a little loosely tied together. But he came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, this, and this." I'm like, "What are we doing?" Oh, all right, okay. Like, and so it really spoke to me as something that we could talk about on the pod because it was like, yeah, that's true. Like, how do we tell our stories, and especially when we're starting to see brands start to really embody like storytelling, really embody that part of the marketing world, really embody, um, it's not the product, it's. I mean, we even just referenced it prior to the pod, Devin, but like, it's who you are and how you share that with the world and what your personal brand ultimately is out to everybody. So again, a little long-winded there, but I want to see for you guys, what does it mean for you to foster your voice, tell your story, or when you hear others tell their story, what does that mean?
Brett, I'll let you take it off first, man.
What fostering your voice means to me is really understanding who you are and what you've been through. I remember I just took a marketing class. I'm a lifelong learner, so I just took a class. My work pays for it. So I read a book called it's called "Describe Yourself in 7 Words or Less." Who are you? And basically, the whole book is about refining who you are to where you can describe yourself in 7 words or less. Which is basically impossible to do. But basically, whenever you're talking to someone, it just says like you have a short amount of time to be able to describe who you are. And it's really all about knowing who you are at the core. And then if you understand those core values and who you are as a person, then you're able to, express it in a way that makes sense to people. So to me, it's really just all about knowing who you are at your core. And that will ultimately lead you into being able to describe it to the people around you.
For me, man, I would say finding my own voice or fostering my own voice has been a bit of a journey. As something that we've like spoken about previously was like, for me, I was really insecure with who I was in my past, very insecure with just being okay with who I was myself, and even understanding how to identify myself. So fostering my voice came with first accepting who I was and my background, not forcing myself, not forcing a square to fit in a round hole. You know what I mean? So if I didn't grow up with like drive-bys happening every night, then why should I act like I grew up in that setting? You know what I mean? Like if I grew up with loving parents, but we fucking struggled, and I remember what it felt like to be, to not have a bed for so long, then that's part of my story. You know what I mean? So like for me, understanding and identifying the things that were truth and like that were true to me in my life, and what that meant and like how it affected me from my adolescence to where I'm at now and how I grew. And then from there, seeing like the habits I have, the characteristics that I have, and what I bring to the table on a daily basis when I'm approaching my goals, my life, work, everything else, and seeing all those things come together and how my experiences have affected me up to this point. And for me, that's part of like how I find my voice. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a big part of my voice is based in struggle because I appreciate it. So when I speak about things, like I use for me, I use quotes because they may sound cliche to everyone else, but for me, they embody a truth of what I'm saying. And for me, they give me inspiration because I'm reminded of moments and memories where I didn't have anything or any inspiration. So I would say that for me, fostering your own voice is being okay with who you are, accepting it, and then identifying where you want to go, and then being able to look at what you're doing on a daily basis, being honest with yourself about it, and then kind of just identifying like what's the thing that kind of drives you, what's gotten you to this point, and I guess what gets you further. But does that sound crazy? Because I'm maybe I'm
Yeah.
all over the place.
Well, I think we're all amalgamating, like, and we're bringing together ideas that are ultimately people can use as identifiers, markers, and seeing if they're right on the right path to figuring
Yeah.
out. And here, another thing too is I don't think either any of us are experts specifically on this topic. I think we're all contributors, and so for me, when I think about this, when I think about how I fostered my voice, I always think, and especially from our Pacific Islander culture, it's like storytelling is everything, and like I always think back to how I've been able to foster my voice, and it really is sitting down and looking at like what experiences in my past have sit so vividly I could repaint the picture and over again. Like I can literally repaint the picture of me and my brother sitting in our apartment in our laundry baskets, acting as if they're race cars and having bicycle helmets on our heads as if we're racing down a hill and we're sitting in the middle of our one bedroom apartment like what's going on here? I remember the like and being able to paint this vivid picture of, carpet knee football. So those of you that grew up in like, small, maybe like 1-2 bedroom, even just living room spaces, like those of you that felt, me and my brother would always play basically carpet football. And that's basically football where it's on your knees only. And you have to get to the other end of the house without being tackled.
We're playing that next time I come over. We're
No,
playing.
dude. No.
I love the sound of that so much.
But I'm saying like these are goofy experiences. But I'm saying like I always think back to when I think about fostering my voice, is those vivid experiences, pictures, those things that are painted that I could literally just paint from memory. Sitting in the middle seat in my dad's moving truck company car, and just like, what that sensation was, what that nostalgic feeling was, what that, identity marker that gave me, or what it made me value. And so I think about those experiences and how I can tie them directly to value, like what I came to value, what I came to, really hold dear. And so I think about, seeing, for example, my mom being a single mother and going to work every day, and then it was always the TV dinner tray meals or KFC buckets on the way home, and that was the stuff that like made me realize it's like, man, okay, like life's on the go, like she's moving, and so she don't got time to always like waste on cooking a whole big old meal because blah blah blah. She got 2 kids to raise in a full-time job, and she got to make things happen. So that was like, for me, I was always like really proud of that, as like, okay, so we work hard in this family. Like that's something like we do. We hustle, we grind, we keep it moving, and we try to reduce as much time and be most efficient as possible with our time, as whether it's healthy or not, right? Because KFC, but that's what I think of, man, when I think about fostering your voice. And maybe a first best step for me was, again, painting those pictures of those experiences that you could just call from a snap of your finger without even trying. And so that's something that's always really helped me. For you all, when you hear somebody telling their story, or when you hear somebody speak on, their life experiences, what stands out to you the most? Like what is something that people that you're moved by, I guess, when it comes to hearing from people?
I think that it's the way they articulate it, if that makes sense. It's the way that they make you feel when they're telling the story, right? Jake, like you were just talking about painting those pictures. I think the best storytellers, for me, it was my grandfather. Like whenever he told a story, like you were so captivated. Like I remember he was telling a story about how they moved out of San Francisco into Marin, and it was just captivating. Like I could see, I was there. So I think that when people are telling their story, it's all about how they articulate, how they make you feel. How it just how you are involved in their story. I think those are the best storytellers, are the ones that make you right there with them. And Devin, gave us that book by David Goggins. Like I was right there. Like I was right there with him. Like it was so captivating, and you learn so much by going to that place. So I think that people that are able to do that have the most impact to me personally.
Sensations, feelings. Like what you kind of, the sensation you walk away with, that you're just like,
exactly, yeah, how it makes you just feel while you're listening to their story.
Almost puts you in pause, freeze mode. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. For me, man, when I'm listening to someone's story, I would say that like I don't know it's hard for me to like kind of contextualize like what exactly I look for. But for me, normally I like really enjoy like the detail of not only people's story, but I don't know, man. Like it's hard for me to think about it, and I'm saying this because like it's a lot like what you mentioned earlier, Jake. You mentioned earlier that we do come from a kind of a people of storytellers, and for me, when I was young, I wanted to be a writer. So I love hearing how people break down their story. I love just like what Brett was saying. It aligns very well. Like I love hearing the buildup of where someone started and like the ebbs and flows of it. You know what I mean? The highs and the lows. I love hearing when something is has like a very solid storyline to it. You know what I mean? When people are able to wrap that shit in, it always like, yo, that's amazing, right? Looking at some of the stories we've been able to kind of dive into already, the David Goggins one. It was fascinating to see how many things kind of like lined up and how they were able to bring it all together. But for me, it's always been kind of challenging to pinpoint one or two things. But something that I look for when people are telling me is kind of like the quality of the struggle. You know what I mean? And
The
I'll say
quality of
that.
the yeah, explain that a little bit because I'm curious what you mean by that.
I got you. I got you. So like, I'll liken it to superhero movies, right? When you're looking at the quality of struggle between someone like Bruce Wayne or someone like Spider Man, they're very, very different, right? Like one individual came from wealth, his parents were killed, and then it fueled him to get to a different place. Another one grew up with just or seeing kind of a father-like figure die in front of him, the same, but also like kind of struggled and it's hard to kind of like put those two into context in a sense. But I look at the quality of someone's like the quality of like the struggle they go through and seeing how they deal with it. Like another good example, one that's probably better because we can edit out what the fuck I just talked about, the superhero ones, but the David Goggins one, right? You were able to hear the quality of his struggle to the point to where you felt it. When you heard, I mean not saw, but when you heard his mom driving away from their abusive father, and you saw and you read the book and you heard her going down a dirt road, or you read that she was going down a dirt road, and that they went into a garage, and then they closed it right behind them so that their father wouldn't know that they had already like they were still there. They waited till nightfall, and then their car broke down. When you visualize that, it brought it to a different place for you. And it's just like that level of struggle. And then it was just like, oh, no, this is the beginning. You know what I mean? So for me, when I'm listening to someone's story, I don't know, man. I like really dive into the quality of it in terms of the struggle. And it may just that. I mean, he worked with a ghostwriter, an amazing, right? And he also it was hard for him to put his story into words. So maybe it depends on like factors that aren't really in our control. You know what I mean? But still, when I'm listening to someone's story, hearing how things started and kind of the ebbs and flows to the middle and where it goes, it's always beautiful to me. You know what I mean? Just like seeing rags to riches stories. Those things are fucking fascinating.
So I mean, so let's bring it to, you talked about the quality of it and how like sometimes like those rag to riches stories are like really, really powerful. That like I mean, they're the best, honestly, in my opinion. They're the best. They're the ones that motivate me the most. For those of us that are listening that don't think we have such a like ridiculously like rags to riches story, but we have something to share with the world. We have something to we want to share something about ourselves with the world. How do we give tips to people? How do we share with them different ways to, I guess, put themselves out there in a way that leaves a similar impact? It doesn't have to be the same, I think the thing, especially with our culture and our communities in the U.S., we love an underdog story.
Very much so. Very.
But I think there's something to be said for those that, it doesn't have to be so stark to share your story, to identify that there's value there. And so, maybe something we can dive into of like, in what ways can we share with people ways to share their experiences with the world without sounding like they're the hero of their own story. You know what I mean? And so what I mean by that is like, we're not going to be moved by the fact that you say like, oh, I had this great education and I worked so hard and I got all these prestigious degrees and now I have a 6-figure job, and like you're at this point you're like just listing off, you know, it's almost like you're just bragging. I'm like, all right, cool, dude, nice. Like, what did you endure? Share with me what it felt like to do 24 hours in the library. Share with me what it felt like to, you know,
Give me your struggle.
Yeah. I mean, that might be the reality for just some people. Is like their struggle wasn't that much of a struggle, but I think we all experience stuff in different ways, and so you know, I think what I would hope for people to do is not compare. You know, I think when I hear, especially of like the David Goggins story, man's life is exactly that rags to riches to that very stark underdog experience, and so you know, one of the things I would always hope is like you don't compare that. You have the same value in your story that you're sharing, that I would argue David Goggin does, man. I just think you have to package it correctly.
Facts.
And so that's one thing I would say. Well, what about you guys?
I think it's how it's told, man. It's just like what you mentioned. It really is how it's told. You know, for me, the example I think of that I thought of while you were talking that was like hard for me to contain is Gary Vaynerchuk, right? He is like the poster child of entrepreneurship. But the guy, like, yes, he was a first generation immigrant, but he was not afraid to tell people, like, yeah, I went to college and yeah, my family owned a supermarket, but I went back home and I worked my ass off for years with them, right? And he's not afraid to like let people know, yeah, but then he started over at like 34, right? So it's like I feel like there's struggle in everyone's journey, and it's just like what you're saying, but it depends on how you package it, right? Because when you're starting over at 34 with absolutely nothing to your name except the experience of building up a business from $3 million to $60 million, you know what I mean? Like it's very, very different. But the beautiful thing is like, yeah, it wasn't a place where like he was homeless, right? But the guy like built himself up into what everyone knows Gary Vaynerchuk is known for now. Which if anyone looks that up, there's so many other things that you can identify with the Vaynerchuk name, right? But I feel like it really depends on how it's told. At least that's from my perspective. You know? Yeah. What about you, Brett?
You know, Jake, when you ask that question of like how we can give tips to people on like how to give, you know, advice or, you know, share your experiences, first thing that came into my mind is you got to be confident. You know, you have to understand, like I live by the motto, you can learn something from every single person you come into contact with. So I think it's very important to know like your experiences can be valuable to somebody else. Like you're not just some average Joe. You're not just some, you know, the person next door. Like your experiences can mean something to somebody else. So confidence is first and foremost. Next thing I would say is that you have to be honest and genuine. You know, at least for me, I can tell if someone's not being honest and genuine. I can tell if someone's just blowing smoke, just saying stuff just to say things. Like I can tell if someone's being genuine or not. So if you're trying to give advice or share experiences with somebody, you have to be genuine because most people can see right through that. So you got to be honest and genuine. And then the last thing for me is it has to be relatable. You know, I don't think that you can share an experience and share it with somebody. You know, there's a difference between talking in front of a group of people, sharing your life story. I'm not saying that, like, you know, that's one way of doing it. But if you're just with your friend or your coworker and you're sharing an experience that has no relation to what they're going through, it's not going to make any sense to them. So you have to be relatable in that regard. You have to know your context. You have to understand kind of what they're going through. Obviously, you're not going to know exactly what they're going through, but you can at least tailor some of your experiences and be like, hey, I kind of had this similar experience and this is how I got through it, and then portray that to them in a way that makes sense. So those are kind of the pillars to me that if you're trying to give advice or share your experience with somebody, those are the things that you have to do to have the biggest impact on somebody.
Hell yeah. I like
that. Can we list those off again? Because those are good. Those are
yeah. So confidence, you know, confidence is key. You know, you have to understand that what you have and your experiences can be valuable to someone else. You got to be honest and genuine. People can see right through that. People can see straight through any smoke you're trying to blow. And then the last thing is you have to be relatable. You have to you know, understand at least impart what somebody's going through, and then tailor some of your experiences to try and help them. Because if you share something about your life that has no relation to what they're going through, it's not going to have any impact on them. So those three things, to me at least, are important in sharing your experiences and having a voice in certain situations you may find yourself in.
Dude, I'm like smiling because I love that audience piece, that kind of addressing like finding
Right.
common ground, relatability. Because I'm just like sitting about all the different times in my life where I'm going and I'm talking about something. I'm like sitting there. I'm like, oh, I should probably shift gears here because I'm looking at this person and there's just a glass look over their eyes of like, dude, what is this dude talking about? Like, or vice versa. I'm sitting there like, I got nothing to. I'm not trying to engage in this conversation
Right.
at all, dog. Like, let's not do this. Like, because no, for real. I mean, we can even think about family, friends, small microcosm experiences. I look at conversations I have with my family, and I'm sitting there like, I'm just gonna let you talk. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, or like, you know, I'll be in new spaces or social dynamics where I'm just like, dude, what? Like, because like, I mean, you guys are my close boys, and we've had conversations where after an experience with somebody, I'll tell you guys my honest opinion about it, and you'll just I'm so bad at lying, man. So if I don't mess with your message, you'll see
1,000%.
you'll see like a stone look just cross my face of just like, I'm being respectful because I want to let you say your piece, but I'm just like, okay, you know. And so I appreciate you sharing those pillars, Brett, because that, man. And it also talks about the simplicity of a story, the relatability of a story, and like how like the weight of it that ultimately from those pillars that can come. Like, so for example, I think about the power of a story and how simple a story can be that can be worth so much, like literally millions and millions of dollars. You know, I think about like The Rock. Okay, we referenced him before, but his story that literally is worth millions of dollars now is that he talks about how he's had $7 in his pocket at some point in his life, and that's kind of the pivotal, climax point where his life needed to flip the script and just like grind one other direction than the one he was going in. And so I think about that one where I'm like, man, $7 is now $7 Productions, like a multi-million-dollar production company, like endorsing all of his movies and all of his ventures, and just like your simple, like powerful story, a story that fosters your voice, your experience, can be worth millions. It is worth millions. You just need to tap into it, I think.
So, yeah, man. There's so many. There's so many. Kevin Hart, he's one of my favorite examples. Heartbeat Productions. What's it called? Get Fit with Kevin. You know what I mean? Or I don't know, bro. There's so many of them. Like it just aligns really, really well when their story and their brand is on point, and it starts from that. Just very, very simple, right? Just like so many people. Like that's a really good example. And those are really 3 solid points too, Brett. Like really solid.
Well, and I almost want to bring up this too because this always seems to be a theme in some of the conversations we end up having of like your own agency over certain topics, and what I mean by that is like, in preparation for this episode, I sent out some articles to the fellas to like, hey, this is what people are saying that's out there. Like, this is what's out there in regards to what people think it means to like tell a story. And I was sitting, reading some of these articles about like finding your story, knowing your audience, this very structured experience of like what a story is. And I hate rigidness. I can't stand like being told how something's supposed to look. So, in agreement a little bit with you, Brett, like, yeah, you should know your audience. You should find common ground, find relatability. If the story you're trying to tell is purely of your own and your own, direction, there isn't really an intended common ground you're looking for. But besides sharing who you are with, the world around you, like, I think there's a certain point of like, you get to decide what you want. Like, if you want to relate, you can relate. If you don't want to relate, screw everybody. Say your story, and who cares how it's received in some regards. You can I like that position a little bit. I like that uniqueness. I like that. I love authenticity, no matter how it's shared. So that's maybe a common ground that I could find with people, you know. But like, if you're telling a crazy story, but I know it's authentic, like you were talking about, Brett, where it's like you can
Mm-hmm.
feel it, they're not faking it, but the authenticity, they could be talking crazy, they could be talking wild. But if I feel your authenticity, if I feel that, even if it doesn't have a point or an end goal to the conversation, but you're sharing who you are authentically with me, that's something I'm just appreciative of when I listen to stories, man. Like that's something I'm really grateful for and that's something I want to challenge in these articles that we were reading. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, step 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm just like, nah, man, just say what's comfortable, or like say what feels natural, not comfortable. Say what feels natural, and challenge your comfort zone by just putting it out there. That's what I feel like this humble hustle project podcast is a little bit about. It's just like, yo, we kind of just running with it a little bit. There's a little degree of like we running with this, like, and we just boom throwing it out there, and we're seeing how it's
Mm-hmm.
received. You know, tailoring, experiencing, and then like fine tuning as we need. But man, I like that. Like I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That feels good. And so, you know, when it comes to like telling your story, y'all, I just want to throw that 2 cents in there of like, don't be afraid for how it will be received. Don't be afraid of it. You might get
Mm-hmm.
some crazy, like, you know, comments back, lash back, but if it's you, what you gonna be mad about or regretful about? You know what I mean?
Being comfortable in your own shoes like that, man, it takes time. You know what I mean? Like finding, like I mean, like finding your voice. It man, it can be challenging, really. You know what I mean? It's because like have you ever had a moment in time where like you're conscious or in the back of your mind, you're like, hey, grab I'm telling you, man, grab your glasses before you leave, or grab that one thing, grab that water bottle before you leave, right? And then an hour later, you're like, shit, if I only had the thing that I thought about grabbing ahead of time. And listening to that little voice every single time and help, like, using that almost as a guide to help find, like, your voice is
Mm.
really important and it's really challenging because there are a lot of moments in time where it's like I really just wish I listened to that like little voice, but then it it led to like kind of pain. It led to a little bit of struggle. It led to me screwing up a couple things, right?
Yeah.
It, you
Well,
know
let me chime. I want to tap into that conversation a little bit of like, you know, some of the struggles of being able to find your voice and like the developing that. And I know it's going to sound a little cliche, but I think again, we gotta get real okay with failing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like we gotta get real comfortable with not so much like like failing all the time or just whatever it is, but we just that sensation, that feeling that you don't want to ever feel again. And this is I know. Hey, you know what we're talking about fostering your voice. I got a story, right? So I think about back in 6th grade. Man, we were talking about, you know, 6th grade history class, and we were like talking about taxation without representation, and we were gonna have a class debate, and we were gonna get, you know, and this is perfect, right? Because like as young kids, we're trying to figure out ourselves and screw up and all these different, you know, having room to screw up, right? Having room to fail is something I think is important too. But we're having this debate, and I thought I was so profound, dog. I thought I was so smart. I was like, yeah, I got this topic, taxation, no taxation without representation, topic down. I get up in the front of class, like all the classes going back and forth. Everyone's like, I point, you know, I want to talk, I want to talk. And so I get up, I stand up, I say, no representation without representation. And I'm just sitting
so
there, and the entire class stops and just starts breaking up laughing. I was like, dude, what happened? I didn't say it right. What are you talking about? I said it right, and I just felt so stupid, yo. I was like, it was like one of those moments where I was like, man, oh, I'm the idiot. Oh, I'm the one in the room that looks dumb. Okay, I got it. I feel it now. And I was roasted for it, and like like by people I don't like, people that weren't my friends for that until the end of the school year, and I was just like, dude, this feeling, this sensation, it sucks. And so, when I think about being able to find space to foster your voice, you look at all those failures, you look at all those successes, and being able to find a middle ground, and just being able to fail, I think is just a crucial component to being able to foster your voice. Because if you're so worried about failing and don't ever fail, it might be a giant barrier for you to step out into the open and being able to share a story that might help and influence hundreds of millions of thousands of people, whatever it is, that might ultimately change the world, so that's my goofy no representation without representation story.
Like, oh, bro, I think you said it wrong. Hold on,
bro. So bad, man. I look so stupid, and the feeling, the gut feeling I got from it just made me I was like, it was nuts, man. It was nuts, and I literally just wanted to run out of the room, and I was just getting picked on and all this stuff, and I was like, you know what, man, like, screw this school, screw everybody here, But I think we need that room to fail, so we can refine and tune our stories, our voice, our agency, our confidence to speak out on things that we are passionate about, that we do have knowledge over to speak, that we're well versed in, because we failed so many times that we can't even say it wrong, even if we tried to. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man.
Yeah, I think it's easy to talk or tell a story where everything goes right. Like you go, you apply to a job, you go to the interview, you get the job. I think it's harder to talk about failures and trials and tribulations. I think it's harder to tell a story with that and make it meaningful. Where you go, you apply to the job, you have an interview, you do this wrong, so you apply to another job, and then finally you get to your dream job, and now you're ready for the interview, and you get the job. I think it's a lot harder to talk about that. It's harder to talk about your failures. It's harder to talk about things you did wrong to make you who you are today than it is to just talk about all the good things. And I think that a lot of times when people are telling their stories, they fall into that trap. They talk about all the good stuff, and they don't want to talk about their failures because they're failures. They're not good. But there's value, there's lessons to be learned from failure, and I think that's important to include in your story, because we all fail. We all come up short sometimes, and I think that it's important to acknowledge that and include that in your story, because that brought you to where you are today. It's not all, flowers and dandelions, skipping through the meadow. It's, there's things in our lives that you should include in your story. You shouldn't omit them because they were bad. If that makes
it's a mark on your record or something like that. Because
right. You don't want people are going to look down on you because you failed. It's like, dude, like everyone failed.
It's like the idea that people don't put their struggles on social media, right? It's like they don't put it's a highlight reel, and so
exactly. It's the highlight of all the good things, and that's not where your story should be.
And you're right too. Ultimately, when I see the stories that do move me the most on social media, it's the stuff where they do actually end up sharing their struggles, oddly enough. So it's like, all right, well, if that's the case, then maybe that's the battle I want to choose, or the model, the blueprint I want to follow. So I don't know if I'm making sense there, but
no, definitely. Like when people are vulnerable and show that side of like their failure, and they walk through how they fucked up, or even like when somebody's not afraid to tell you what type of person they were before they met you, right? I feel like let's say somebody was like a compulsive liar, and it took them hurting people with that to understand the truth and value what it meant to be an honest and reasonable person, right? It's like when you hear that from somebody, it's like, yo, all right, like not only were you vulnerable, but you spoke about something that's very serious that people deal with, that other people are not willing to go out on a ledge and talk about, right? Because like they say that people lie at least twice whenever they're speaking to someone else, right? That everyone lie. Most people lie at least once or twice in every conversation that they're having, right? And being able to just step out and say like, hey, dude, like I used to be this kind of person, and to see where I'm at now, you know what I mean? It's that Cinderella story type stuff, that's beautiful. You know what I mean? Just like
I even recognize it even with the conversations we're having amongst each other. So like, you know, recently I've been interviewing with some other companies and some opportunities that I want to pursue, um, and I reflected on the fact that, you know, in this platform, in this podcast setting, we're working on fostering our voice. This is a whole component to this, that we're
Mhm.
fostering our voice. And I found that when I walk into some of these rooms that, you know, people worth such and such amount, I'm interviewing for such and such this, I walking in with like a little bit more, you know, a little bit more straighter up posture, talking a little bit with more confidence, and I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, man, I kind of been working on myself recently. Also, I'm gonna own this interview. So we're gonna talk. We're gonna engage here, and I feel right. I feel like I should be here, and
Mhm.
so that's something I feel that I've noticed even from my own conversations with you guys that's been taking this space and helping me in others. And so that's why I'm
Mhm.
saying, where if we even want to talk about the time it's gonna take, man, get together with your friends, man. Get together, chop it
Yeah.
up, talk about some stuff like this, and talk about growth, next steps. I mean, I was just talking to my good buddy Drake, and me and him go back and forth like almost every day, because we're talking to each other every day on topics of like next steps, world, like what things we need to work on, things we're struggling with at our own work job or our own careers, and you know, and it's just like it's a process. But as you take a sec to reflect on the work you're doing to address it, it gives you a lot of confidence that Brett was talking about that you might need, you know, for that impactful story that gives
Mhm.
you a lot of agency to walk in those rooms where dudes are, you know, might be looking at you sideways like, who is this? Like, are you taking my job? Are you trying to do my work? Well, why are you in the same room as I am? And I'm like, I'm gonna show you why. You know what I'm saying? Like we gonna run it down, boom, 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 and this is why, because I know who I am, my value that I bring to the
Mhm.
space, because I know I'm gonna come in and change the game, whether you like it or not. Now I hope we can do that collaboratively, but hey, I kind of want to come in with a little bit of, you know. But yeah, man, I don't know. That's just something I'm feeling about this topic right now, so I just want to throw that out there.
Nah, bro. Hey, nah. Don't just skip over that, man. That's something serious because this translates to so many different parts of our lives, right? Even being like, um, so like even when you're having conversations with people you may be interested in terms of dating, right? Which is that's a whole different segment within itself. But learning and being confident in who you are and finding your own voice and speaking about like things that you're passionate about and just speaking from your own heart and being okay, unapologetic about everything you're saying, right? Not rude, not being a dick, or not even just like not being unthoughtful of the other person in their background, but just being unapologetic, being your honest, true, genuine self. Because you are confident, you know what I mean. Just like Brett was saying, because you are like relating to your audience to an extent, right? And not only that, but you're being real. Like you're being genuine with what you have to say,
Yeah.
right? Those things this
Mhm.
translates so many other ways, and fostering your voice is so important. You know what I mean? Like that. So there was an interview that Jay Z had, and we'll probably clip it for all the listeners. But Jay Z said, "When I step into a room, I don't step into a room as like the businessman that." Like, I don't put on a suit and tie and change up for anybody. I step into a room as me. I present myself as me because
Mm-hmm.
when I'm there, you're gonna know who I am. Like you are your brand. Your voice is your brand. You know what I mean? So it's just like when you're presenting yourself, when you're speaking about yourself, when you're opening your mouth, like that is you fostering your voice. It's part of your brand. You know what I mean? It's like everything you do revolves around that brand of
Mhm.
what people think of when you say your name, when other people say your name, the feeling people get when you walk out of a room. You know what I mean? That effect that happens when your coworkers or someone speaks about you, like that is part of fostering your voice. It doesn't. It's not just in one area. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But that
man. Well, and
Yeah.
that component, I just want to touch on one part of like being able to take that energy and being able to take that level of transparency to your story allows you to take what others may perceive as cockiness and make it solidified as confidence.
talk that
Mhm.
shit.
Like that's where it shifts when people are like, oh,
Mhm.
like he's cocky, da, da, da. It's like we just clipped a video of 50 Cent talking on some interview about this, but like he's cocky. No, no, no. Let me show you the full breadth of my experiences and my story so that you understand the work I've put into this. And that's basically the summary of that clip. And so, you know, y'all, if I'm bringing that same energy, bringing that transparency to my story, you know, it grounds us in a nice confidence rather than oh, who is this guy just trying to be cocky? You know what I mean? So that's something I wanted to add to that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and I wanted to add something. You know, Dev, like I think the way you carry yourself every single day, your actions is part of your story, right? The way you carry yourself, like your habits, the way you treat people, the things you do for others, your characteristics, your personality. I think that's all part of your story. It tells part of your story, right? And I think that if you're not living up to that, like if you're not acting on what you're speaking, like you can say whatever you want to people, but actions speak louder than words. So if you're not carrying yourself that way, if you're not acting the way that you're talking, who's going to listen to you? I've been around people like that where they have the greatest things to say and they don't live it. Like they don't carry themselves like that. Like maybe they're cocky, maybe they're, maybe they're just not a good person. Like, I don't know. Like, but the way you carry yourself and like how you act in everyday life is part of your story. Like I can tell a lot about a person by the way they act, how they treat other people, the way they interact with others. Like I can tell a lot about a person. I can tell a lot about their story based on that. So I think that's also part of it is just how it's not storytelling. I think a lot of times people think of like, you're going to sit someone down and you're going to tell them a story, right? No, there's like the whole background. Like there's a whole other side to it of kind of the background, to where it's who you are as a person and how you conduct yourself in everyday life that is also adds to your story and can make you more credible or make you not credible. So that's just kind of like, I was just thinking about that. I was like, damn, like, it kind of elicited that out of me where it's like, every day is part of your story. You're constantly writing your story.
Bro, we're literally, what's it called? We're in the thick of our story now. And it's so interesting. Like I've had this conversation recently where it's like, I had a friend who came out to Vegas and she was really concerned that she was only going to be here for 2 days. And she was like, all her friends were here. And she was like, I just want this to last forever. And I was like, that's not the beauty in it. The beauty in it is that these moments are fleeting. Is that the moment that was just there is gone. And it's that we can't get it back. And so all we have is right now. We don't have tomorrow because it is a mystery. We don't even have yesterday because that shit is dead and gone. But we have right now. And if you choose in this very moment to be genuine, to just put the energy out there that you wish that you were surrounded by, and that you speak to people as if the way you would want to be spoken to. You know what I mean? Like when you carry yourself in every moment like that, it doesn't have to be an exhausting thing, but it can be something genuine. When you're just purely living and you're very present, it becomes it. You know what I mean? Like finding your voice is simple. It's just like what Jake was saying earlier. To tie it all in, it doesn't even become something someone has to force. It's like, just speak your truth. Be comfortable. Talk that shit. Like if you're speaking just like 50 Cent would, when he was speaking to people, if it made someone uncomfortable, right? Or if you stepping into a room made people feel intimidated, it doesn't mean you're intimidating. It means they were intimidated. It means that you are so confident that people don't know how to feel about it, right? And whose fault is that? Because you didn't do anything wrong, right? But it's like being present. It really helps you foster that voice because you're able to just speak clearly on how you feel. You know what I mean? But
that, man. I like that, man. There was a lot of fire said this entire one. We got some pillars set out there. We got some personal experiences set out there. Some stories highlighted, throughout this episode. And so, again, as always, we this ain't the shortcut to success. This ain't no one-stop shot overnight. Boom, I'm gonna be famous. I'm gonna be a Hollywood star. Multi-millionaire. This is a process, and so the same thing with this, man. Fostering your voice, it's a process. Something you endure every day, like Brett was talking about. Something you show up as, and you consistently show up. Each time working on it. So, man, I appreciate this one. I think, fellas, we might need to start recording in the morning so I can get an episode like this to fire me off through my day, because now I'm like, man, I'm like juiced. I'm ready to rock, and it's like I gotta go to bed. You know what I mean? So so next time, man, we might need to figure something like that out, because these conversations every time leave me with gas in the tank, and I'm just like, yo, I need to be productive with this, right? So, but appreciate y'all, man. That's another one from us. It's another episode. I don't know which one we're on yet. But it's another one in the books. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch you on the next one. Deuces. Mother.
Them got him.
No, can we like figure this out? Are we gonna say deuces? You all gonna say something like